Trump rages against communism after seeing the extreme risk of this movement making a strong comeback, but in disguised form within governments around the world.
Well, I think that's a big threat to our nation, actually, because it's not socialism, it's really communism. They use the word social democrat because it sounds so good, but actually it's communism they're talking about. I think it's the biggest threat to our nation that exists maybe since our founding. That includes World War I, World War II, September 11th. It includes the attack on Pearl Harbor. I think this is the biggest threat. For our nation, people will smile when I say this, but smart people will say, you know, he's probably right. It's basically introducing communism into the United States of America. There's never been anything so dangerous.
The crisis gained momentum after Fox News reported it. On June 29, 2026, a federal grand jury is investigating a businessman based in China for alleged financial irregularities linked to a network that reportedly moved $278 million to left-wing groups within the United States. The investigation targets possible financial crimes, including money laundering, and puts at the center of the case non-profit organizations, shell companies that have already been shut down, and a philanthropic arm linked to Goldman Sachs. That's where Trump's speech stops sounding like just political rhetoric and starts to fit into a broader scenario. Trump had already posted that the communists were finally making their move, and a few days later, he said again that communism is one of the greatest threats the nation has ever seen. What was behind this network? Why did so much money go through structures with financial benefits? How did the radical left draw such intense federal scrutiny? I'll tell you all about that in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward content without any beating around the bush, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The Department of Justice began investigating whether there was any irregular movement of money to fund activist organizations, media outlets, and political groups in the United States. Singham is presented in the investigation as an American businessman based in Shanghai with a history of supporting Marxist causes and connections to a network that operates on several political fronts. The main suspicion is that the money entered the system through formal channels, passed through intermediary entities, and then reached groups with intense ideological activity. The case draws attention because it is not an isolated post or a random campaign statement. Fox News reported that Singham allegedly directed $278 million from Shanghai through three main channels: the philanthropic arm of Goldman Sachs, a company called Mutod LLC, and another called Likewise Conceptions LLC, both of which have already been closed. After that, according to the report, the funds were allegedly transferred to 6 non-profit organizations. The explosive point is exactly this: money that appeared philanthropic being investigated for possible political and ideological use. Jason Smith, a Republican congressman and chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, had already been pressuring organizations linked to this network. On May 5, 2026, the committee demanded documents from Breakthrough News, Tricontinental, and the People's Forum, expressing concern about sources of funding and fiscal sponsorships. The committee's official statement said that these entities are part of a network of non-profit organizations in the United States with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. The committee's official statement carries weight because Jason Smith did not treat the case as a mere matter of non-profit organizations. The lawmaker said there was urgency in finding out whether sources of funding and tax structures helped sow chaos and violence in the United States on behalf of foreign actors.
Gentlemen, 2 days ago, the committee demanded documents and tax records. It stated that nonprofits in the United States are profitable. The ativistas de esquerda, they were subpoenaed by the U.S. Treasury. Why? Take a guess. Apparently, they really were receiving money from hostile foreign regimes to spread anti-American propaganda throughout the United States of America. Most likely, a large part of that money comes from the CCP, and that's what's happening. A huge federal investigation is underway right now to hold these anti-American far-left propagandists accountable who may be receiving foreign money, apparently.
The investigation targets exactly the point that most concerns the American right: the use of legal benefits, exemptions, and a social service front to protect a political operation. When money comes in as philanthropy and goes out as ideological mobilization, oversight becomes a matter of national security. Trump entered this debate with a warning. On June 26, 2026, during a Faith and Freedom Coalition event in Washington, he said that recent victories by left-wing candidates in New York represented a serious threat to the American nation. Reuters reported that Trump used this advance of the left to reinforce a line of attack against what he calls communism, especially targeting the growth of democratic socialists within the Democratic Party.
The alarm is sounding all across America. President Donald Trump says that the communists are finally making their move, warning that, in his view, far-left political and economic ideas are gaining power. Trump argues that communism comes from a simple promise. The government will give people everything they want, but that promise comes at a cost, taking wealth and property from those who have earned them. For Trump, history is the proof. Critics of communism often point to the former Soviet Union, Mao-era China, Cuba, and Venezuela as examples where centralized control brought scarcity, economic decline, a drop in living standards, and political repression. Historians and economists still debate the causes, context, and lessons of these experiences. But Trump frames the current debate as something beyond politics. He presents this as an ideological issue, a theological dispute about the future of America, capitalism, socialism, or something even more radical, and his final message is unmistakable: the game is on.
On June 29, 2026, at the White House, Trump went even further by saying that the socialism used by these groups would, in practice, be communism by another name. He stated that the threat would be one of the greatest ever faced by the United States, citing World War I, World War II, September 11, and Pearl Harbor as weighty comparisons. The sequence of events helps explain why the rhetoric grew. First came victories by more left-leaning figures in Democratic internal contests. Then came Trump's speech warning that the communists were making their move. Next, information emerged that a federal grand jury was investigating Singham and an alleged funding network with $278 million. The radical left would not only be gaining ground in the public debate, but also receiving organizational support, funding, and institutional protection to operate in the United States. The case is also connected to the investigation into trips to Cuba involving the influencer Hassan Piker and Medea Benjamin, the co-founder of Code Pink. On May 23, 2026, Fox News reported that federal authorities sent administrative subpoenas to obtain financial, logistical, and communication data about trips made to Cuba in March. The investigation is trying to determine whether there were trips to Cuba. The investigation into Cuba broadened the scope of the issue because it involves not only money but also international activism. According to Fox News, Baker and Benjamin were among the targets of a broader investigation involving Americans who took part in a delegation called the No Extra America Convoy. The report indicated that authorities wanted to understand whether there was coordinated funding or delivery of goods to Cuba in conflict with United States regulations. It is at this point that Trump's anti-communism rhetoric begins to encounter concrete cases being investigated by federal agencies. Rick Scott reacted strongly to the Cuba case. The Republican senator stated that Hassan Piker and Code Pink went to Cuba, stayed in five-star hotels, got close to members of the communist regime, and ignored political prisoners. It's not just a matter of opinion. The concern is whether organizations based within the United States received indirect support from foreign interests to influence protests, the media, universities, and public debates. When money comes from abroad, goes through tax structures, and ends up in political mobilization, the line between philanthropy and interference grows dangerously thin. The American right sees in this investigation a confirmation of what Donald Trump has been saying. Modern communism doesn't always arrive with a red flag at the door. It can come with the language of social justice, humanitarian campaigns, student groups, media outlets, international trips, and tax-exempt organizations. The accusation now under investigation is that this mechanism may have operated from within the American system, using the system's own loopholes to attack its foundations. Communism is not a thing of the past, it is a present threat. He points to New York, to Cuba, to non-profit organizations, to digital activists, and to the money trail. His political thesis is that the radical left tries to relabel ideas to make them seem more acceptable, calling communism social democracy, social justice, or international solidarity. The packaging has changed, but the project still targets property, faith, economic freedom, and national sovereignty. For years, these groups have presented themselves as defenders of the poor, workers, and the oppressed. Now, part of this structure appears to be under investigation for possible links to foreign money, communist influence, and the use of non-profit entities for political purposes. Trump saw extreme risk because the case touches the center of American cultural power. It's not just about a businessman, it's about who finances ideas, who organizes protests, who sets the agenda for influencers, who pushes narratives, and who tries to normalize communist regimes within a nation built on freedom. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially through the Pix key that appears on your screen. We are an independent channel dedicated to bringing you the truth. Your contribution helps us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Dedicated to bringing you the truth. Your contribution helps us keep going. Thank you.